3, 2, 1, поехали!
Happy New Year, everyone! Welcome back to Sparking Creativity, the ethno-arts podcast, where we hear stories about how communities around the world are using their arts to connect with God, engage with the Bible, and share the gospel in meaningful ways according to their culture. So happy that you joined us today. We have some exciting news to share. We were named among the top 10 Christian art podcasts on Feedspot to listen to in 2025. Some of you may remember us being awarded this honor a few years ago, and we're just so grateful to be included amongst all the other great podcasts that are focusing on art and faith. And thank you for what you do, for listening, for sharing, for engaging in these different ways. We're so honored to be a part of this. I'll include the link to the list so you can see what other podcasts are there if you want to check them out. And for now, we will dive right in. Today, we have a special guest who sent in a voice recording to share some of her stories and what's going on. So I'll pause here and let her introduce herself.
Hi everybody, my name's Bron Cleaver. I'm from the Institute for Bible Translation in Moscow in Russia, and we are involved in translating the Bible into 56 different languages within Russia, within the Russian Federation and the surrounding countries.
So it's really great to have Bron with us and to talk about Bible translation. I think we've covered it a little bit. It's been mentioned, at least, other people being involved in this kind of ministry. And we'll get a little bit more of a deeper look today through her experiences, incorporating local artistic expressions into translations. I'll just say a few words from my perspective first of why is ethno-arts important in Bible translation. We've mentioned before that arts are forms of communication. They are embedded deeply in cultures, and they're meaningful ways to pass on important information. They're identity markers. So in Bible translation, obviously, is trying to communicate something very important from many people in different contexts long ago to many different people in these different cultural contexts today. And so there's a lot of important things to consider. If you look at the Bible itself and how it is constructed or assembled, all these many different books and writings are communicating often in different artistic styles that are meaningful to the original audiences. And Bible translation has the opportunity to engage with these different forms like proverbs, poetry, song, stories, parables, narratives, letters, and so much more. And so it's really important to consider what could be the most meaningful way to share these messages in Scripture that are already artistic in nature to a new audience today. What could be ways that they could engage with it that would help them to know that this message is for them? Bible translation wants to have Scripture in people's languages so they know that it's for them. And if we could also just help it to be a little bit closer by being in local forums, using local metaphors or imagery, there's a lot to unpack here. But the idea is that the Bible is intended for everyone. There's wisdom in there that is for everyone. So today, Bron will share with us different things that the Institute for Bible Translation are involved in. And one of the things that she'll mention in this first part is about the acronym OBT, which stands for Oral Bible Translation. And this is an approach to Bible translation that, as the name implies, it is done orally for oral preference cultures. And just to know that this particular approach is a really natural way, I feel, to incorporate these other oral communication forms. And so let's hear what she has to say.
I'd like to tell you about a couple of projects which are interesting, in which we're hoping to develop art initiatives with local arts. We have an oral Bible translation project in a sensitive area of Russia, which is a Muslim area. And it's very interesting because we have Muslim translators who are very keen to translate the Holy Scriptures into their language, which is a minority language, because they want to help preserve their language. And they're so keen that, in fact, they're making videos for other Muslim groups in the area to try and persuade them as well that this is such a great idea to translate the Scriptures as well into their languages. So far, we're translating Ruth. We're translating Jonah, and we're looking for an artist so we can have contextualized illustrations alongside those. We hope to do different productions with one voice and maybe many voices, like an audio drama, perhaps with sound effects. And in some of these some of these small minority groups, we're also beginning to translate Proverbs. And Proverbs are very, very popular among the local people, their own proverbs, their own local ethnic proverbs. Many of these groups have their own collections of proverbs. So our idea is to produce a small booklet with some biblical proverbs that we've translated and all on themes. So we pick certain themes, for example, anger or family or conflict. We translate proverbs on these themes, and then we also use local proverbs, so people can look in the book and see on a particular theme their own local proverbs and also biblical proverbs, and they can perhaps contrast them. And also with contextualized, maybe slightly humorous drawings illustrating some of the perhaps more humorous proverbs.
Something really important that she talked about is her intended audience. And these different groups are minority language speakers, spread across different areas of the Russian Federation, and they all can be viewed as an intended audience of everyone who speaks the language. You can also break it down into smaller populations, like she mentioned some groups are Muslim. Maybe in some areas there are small populations of Christians, maybe there's a larger population of Muslims, maybe there's another religious group. You could break it down into even different ages or gender. There's so many different intended audiences. We want to encourage people to think about what is the most meaningful way to share this specific passage of Scripture to this particular audience. And that could change. It could be different for different groups. We're getting into another area of consideration known as scripture engagement in some contexts. And depending on what your role is, some people might argue that Bible translation is one form of scripture engagement. And there are those who make a lot of products or come up with a lot of scripture-based things. Maybe it's a video, maybe it's songs, a lot of different things that can be based on Scripture. So it's important to think about the distinctions of what is considered a translation, what is based on Scripture, but regardless, the intended audience considerations is at the heart of all of it. And for many Muslim contexts, the expectations of what a holy book should look like, for how prophets should be represented, or if it's an audio form, what the kind of voice is that is reading or reciting the scripture passage. And you noticed even in Proverbs, she's thinking about what are what are themes in the local proverbs that are already there, and where are some overlap with themes from biblical proverbs, and how can they bridge the gap to introduce Scripture into other people's lives by starting with what they have already. We like to think of arts, these different forms of communication, as just like their language. It's a gift from God that He's gifted them with to connect with Him and to communicate important messages. And so if we start with what they have, it can make it a little more seamless, a little more attractive. Maybe it's more acceptable because it looks and sounds like them. So many things that we could talk about here. A lot of great things going on. So we're just trying to introduce the kinds of things that are happening in the world of Bible translation, and those are involved in those kinds of projects. So let's hear from Bron again about one of the groups that has been working on translating the Psalms.
We also have a very interesting project in Altai, which is in southern Siberia. The Altai people, it's a group of about 60,000 people, and we're actually working on completing the full Bible. But meanwhile, we've also done a Psalms project, where initially we started looking at local genres within the community, analysing them and describing them. And then we started to orally translate about 15 psalms in total, psalms of different themes, different genres, different types. And looking at the Altai genres, we tried to match some of them with the genres of the psalms. So if it was a lament, we tried to use an Altai-style lament in performing and singing that psalm, and in translating it, of course, as well. And if it was a song of joy, we tried to use an Altai genre that would reflect that. And so we came up with, together, the team of musicians and translators came up with about 15 Altai worship songs which could be used in local churches. And in fact, they created a group, the musicians created an ensemble with costumes and national instruments, and travelled around Altai performing in 10 different Altai regions and areas, mostly to Christians. Some of them were also to people who don't come to church. And the reaction was very, very positive. People were saying, God is speaking in my language. I understand this because it's in a genre, or it's in a type of song that I recognise, that I understand. I can hear my own Altai songs, but I hear biblical words put to them. And the response was very, very positive indeed.
This kind of thing is so exciting to me. I love hearing about how people are taking these meaningful musical song forms and singing Scripture. And the Psalms are already made to be sung. They're already in the original languages, in specific genres like she talked about. So just like the Proverbs focus, looking at Psalms and all the different artistic styles that are there, different song forms, different poetic structures, finding where there are already communication forms in the culture that would be appropriate for communicating the specific theme, topic, emotions. Again, just making it that much closer. And in the Altai's case, they're wanting to use them as worship songs. So as the translation is finished, then they already have new songs that they can sing in their gatherings. It's so exciting. I just love that. Some other benefits to consider. In the Bible translation world, you will hear people talk about the goals of the translation. They want the translation to be clear, accurate, natural, acceptable, and the community to have ownership of it. And I won't unpack each of those here, but by including local arts, it can help achieve each of these goals. And so we could talk about that a lot, and there are other places where this is talked about and written about. And so I'm not going to go into that now, but if you'd like to explore more of those, please let us know. This is a really great topic and area to explore. So just to keep in mind. Now, some of the challenges might be in translation, if it's based on scripture, if it's a scripture-based song, you have a lot more freedom and leeway with some of the word choices, some of the maybe the rhymes, the rhythms. But in order for it to be considered a translation and go through all the proper consultant checking, some of the forms or maybe some features of the forms might have to be sacrificed. So it's not that it's always 100% going to include everything in the genre. Sometimes with what is necessary for it to be in the genre might have to have a certain syllable count, and there might have to be rhyme in certain areas in the structure. And sometimes that's not always possible for it to still reflect the original language meaning. So there are people who have experimented with this and just taking the time to consider and experiment, even if it includes a little bit of the genre and some of the features that are recognized by the community, it's still a little bit closer than it was. And they have a really good start to something. If they wanted to incorporate more features of that local genre, they have the option to make some scripture-based song from that. So something to consider. And there are a lot of challenges to this. And again, it's a matter of is it communicating as close to the original language meaning, and how is it being received, and how is it going to be used. And so next, Bron will share with us about some of the scripture engagement activities. So it's great that the Institute for Bible Translation is thinking not just about the translated word, whether that's in print or it's in an oral form. They're also thinking about other creative ways that people will engage with it and use it.
We recently had a scripture engagement seminar in Antalya with 33 of our projects represented. And after that scripture engagement seminar, we've also got different smaller initiatives breaking out in different parts of Russia among those translation teams. One group went home to Yakutia, which is in northern Siberia, and put a team together of 12 people from the church who are going to be involved in scripture engagement with the Yakut Bible, distributing books, making videos, doing concerts, doing children's competitions, all kinds of things they're involved in. And another smaller group, I think the Evenki group, created an Evenki-style round dance where they chant different words. And these round dances are used at Evenki festivals. And the lady created a special Christian round dance with words from the Bible, and they perform this in their local community. So we're really happy to see these ventures, these experiments, these use of local arts breaking out in lots of different teams, and we hope in this way that we can bring the Bible and God's words closer to the hearts of the people in these different people groups within the Russian Federation. Thank you.
Thank you, Bron. That is awesome stuff and very exciting. I hope you see all the various possibilities that are present in different ministries, and in this particular case in Bible translation, many possibilities to communicate Scripture in meaningful ways, to engage with Scripture in meaningful ways. I'm sure all of you have had your own experiences of how you connect with Scripture and what are the most meaningful ways. And for many people, it's not always in the reading, but there are other ways to receive it, to hear it, and there's also creative ways to respond and to interact with it and to share with others. There's so many different aspects of ethno-arts in Bible translation, and you've heard a lot of it. There's the actual translation of the text and how that gets done and how arts can help with that. There's the design element of the final product. If it is in a book or it's going to be on a website or it becomes an app, what does the cover look like? What is the color, the design, the icon? All of these are ethno-arts principles and considerations. And we're asking the question, who is the intended audience and what's the most meaningful way to communicate and present the scripture? So we have visual aspect, we have the textual aspects, and we have the other engagement or sharing of scripture through the round dances, through chants, through songs, through so many things. I'm going to try to track down some links so you can hear some of what the Altai are doing. And I think one of the groups she mentioned, either the Yakut or the Evenki, may have a video about this seminar and the things that were birthed from it, the new ideas and initiatives that were started. So if I can track those down, I'll put them in the show notes. And also just wanted to mention that Bron has written a lot about her different experiences, and I will include a link to one of her articles in there. And I'd like to hear from you. What are ways that you engage with Scripture? What are the most meaningful ways that you connect with it, that you like to interact with it, or that you like to share it with others? If you have examples, we could share those. If you have things that you have observed with other cultures, we'd love to share those as well. There's so many great resources out there through all of our personal experiences. So we will make sure to connect with you if you'd like to share, and I'll try to track down some of these links that I mentioned. I want to thank Bron for being a part of the podcast. There's so much great work going on with the Institute of Bible Translation, and so we're just thankful that she took the time to share these with us. If you have other questions about how EthnoArts relates to Bible translation or other kinds of ministries, please let us know. If you are in a position maybe in your church, if you lead worship, thinking about who all is in your congregation, what could be meaningful ways that you share Scripture or lead in the musical part of worship or hearing the word read, or what are the different opportunities that you have there? What about in your small groups and amongst your various networks and relationships? How can you encourage others to engage with Scripture and share it? Perhaps you could be one who sparks this kind of creativity in others and be an encouragement in that. So please connect with us. We'd love to hear more. If you don't mind, to take a moment and rate and review the podcast wherever you're listening. This will help others to know about the show. It will continue to put us in front of other audiences. And as always, we are welcoming of your questions, of your comments, the things that come up for you. Also looking for volunteers as well. People who want to help edit, people who can help with social media or promotion or finding stories, interviewing people. This takes a team of people, and we're really grateful for our volunteers. So please write to us at ethnoartspod@gmail.com, or you can connect with us on Facebook and Instagram at ethnoartspod. Thank you so much for being here. That's all for this time. So I'll leave you to it now to go and spark some creativity wherever you are. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. We would love to hear what you thought.
What resonated with you today? What questions did this raise? Anything you'd like to learn more about? Maybe you have stories you'd like to share.
Please feel free to contact us at ethnoartspod@gmail.com or follow us on Facebook and Instagram at ethnoartspod.
We also invite you to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on. This will help others to find out about the show. Please feel free to share the podcast with others.
We look forward to sharing more with you next time on Sparking Creativity, the EthnoArts Podcast.